Welcome to Psychology Ninjas. We're doing an optional content today from criminological psychology. Here it's the turn of psychological formulation. Now, psychological formulation as a form of offence analysis is a little bit of an odd one, because you could treat this as a theory in terms of how it might explain offending behaviour, but also as a therapy. For the purpose of our AO1 or explanation marks, this doesn't make a difference because either way, we are talking about key terms associated with psychological formulation. So how does this break down? Well, at first you want to talk about its purpose, and the big one here is to focus on its idiographic nature. That is focusing on an individual and why they behave the way they do in terms of their offences. You then talk about the different stages of psychological formulation, offence analysis. Key things here in terms of this is motivations and reasons for the offences, but also the application of common factors, but only if they're relevant to that individual. Next, we're understanding the function of offending, its purpose. Does it feel a need or craving? And here we might apply other theories from psychology to explain criminal behaviours. So do have a look at those other videos for biological and social explanations. Thirdly and finally, we'd have our application to treatment. That treatment is based on the conclusions that we've already reached, but also that treatments reflect the risk of reoffending. Equally, as we've talked about in terms of its purpose, its idiographic, this application to treatment is viewed as a work in progress, and treatments options are adapted as required. So, we've talked about evaluation, and we've talked about this possibly being a theory or a therapy. We're going to focus on this as a theory in terms of using soda. However, there will be opportunities to bring in bits of therapies, and you could adapt this in order to have a more detailed and breadth of evaluation. So when we're thinking about this as a soda, how does this break down? Well, we always want to have arguments and counter-arguments in order to develop those logical chains of reasoning. We're talking about supporting research, opposing how psychological formulation has been researched, giving this as a different theory and explaining why it's beneficial, and also its application. So, when we're talking about exam questions on paper 2, the biggest one we can have is 16 marks. Here we can see we've got evaluate as our command word, and therefore we want to be balanced in terms of our AO1 and AO3, which weirdly means we should be imbalanced, giving more evaluation than explanation given the 6 versus 10 marks available. So firstly, you talk about its purpose, focusing on its idiographic nature, and then we talk about research support. This comes from a case study of Mr. C by Whitehead et al. We can use both conclusions and findings for and against, in that Mr. C developed a sense of identity, preventing further relapse. However, that wasn't until we had already relapsed in 2 violent instances. But overall, we could say it's effective in reducing offending behaviour. We then move through to offence analysis, talking specifically about the motivations behind offending and having that key AO1 content that we've already talked about. We're then evaluating based on methodological issues, and this is either through our ability to define success of psychological formulation is through reoffending scores, and these might be skewed depending on whether reoffending is actually picked up. Also, that our analysis in our offender analysis and understanding the function of behaviour is all done through retrospective interviews, which may not reflect the true nature of the offence. In fact, the offender may be looking for reasons why they offend in order to explain their behaviour that may not be true about their childhood or previous developmental aspects. Overall, as a way of analysing offending, this lacks validity because of its subjective interpretation. Once we've talked about how we might understand the function of offending, we can say that actually psychological formulation is a different way of viewing offences and may give us new insights, particularly based on this multi-agency approach that McCurran and Taylor highlight, maximising the skills of lots of different professionals. However, by using lots of professionals, this may create lots of information and contradictions in terms of treatment and explanations. But if in its idiographic nature, this is holistic, focusing on all of the factors affecting a particular individual and their offending behaviour. Finally, we talk about application to treatment and how it is tailored and a work in progress, and this has applications in reducing offending. By tackling the source of offending and its function, this allows offenders to be non-directive in terms of their approach and actually reflect for themselves how they might tackle their offending behaviour. This emic approach, or looking at the uniqueness for individuals, may result in non-obvious treatment solutions and may be difficult to structure for clinicians, but overall this gives us high levels of credibility. Let's have a look at this exam question. Here we've got a discuss question, which means we need to explain and then apply this information. So we're focusing on explaining psychological formulation and how this might explain Santino's offending, as we can see here in the STEM and the information that we've got here. There is an equal split between AO1 and AO2 marks, and we want that to be reflected in our answer. Let's have a look at a second exam question, and we're sticking with the same STEM here, but we've got a slightly different question. Here we have explain. Explain with a STEM means that we need to have application once again. We are applying our strength and our weakness to Santino specifically. We get 1 mark for identifying a strength and weakness in context, so it has to be applied to Santino, and that's not just a name drop, but specific details from the STEM that we have been given. We get our 2nd mark for our strength and weakness in terms of justifying why that is a strength or a weakness. Thanks for listening today. Don't forget to like, subscribe and hit that bell.